Hi, this is Frank Schaefer. I am an author and commentator. I have written 5 novels, about 10 nonfiction works. Some have been bestsellers. Some have sunk into the pond of literary output like a stone going into the ocean, never to be seen again. I have been doing this for the better part of 40 years, and I have a lot of friends who are writers. My writer friends and I are, to the extent we talk about this, concerned about something. And that is, we seem to be coming into a period of history that is anti-art, anti-expression, anti-freedom of expression, and frightened out of its wits that it might offend somebody. We have all this talk about cultural appropriation. God forbid I write a novel in a woman's voice or a Black man's voice. God forbid I tried to include a trans character in one of my books. What do I know about that? Well, maybe the shared human element of creativity is what overrides these differences, or at least can in the best literature. These days, we have the ridiculous example I commented on before of people going back and rewriting texts in children's books and other texts to try to make them acceptable to today's language police. The major publishers have conglomerated into 3 huge outfits that basically run all the smaller imprints. And those 3 huge outfits, using corporate think that doesn't want to be controversial, hires what's called sensitivity readers to check out new manuscripts and make sure that the language in them, whether it's correct pronouns or the use of dialogue being written by someone who's male or female or trans or non-binary about another gender, whatever it may be, conforms to whatever that day demands in terms of correctness. That's sort of from the left, but it's more corporate than left wing. It's kind of HR department sensitivity training bullshit. On the right, we have DeSantis in Florida and this Republican Party shaping up to censor the teaching of, say, Black history or women's history or about the suffragette movement or feminism or the truth, the medical truth and facts about abortion, whatever it may be. Between the right and the left, it is as if the arts and freedom of expression, drama, theater, music, poetry, stand-up comedy, television writing, movie writing, directing, acting, who's allowed to act parts. You have to be in a wheelchair to act the part of someone in a wheelchair, whatever it may be. The circle of freedom of expression is shrinking. This is a disaster. And it is leaving us with a new generation that doesn't seem to understand what art is. So let me just take a minute to explain from my point of view as a 70-year-old old white male, not exactly a popular type of person to be to talk about these things these days, but I'm going to say it because I'm also a human being with the same rights you have, no matter who you are. From my point of view, art is not about making you, my reader, comfortable. Art is not about being always in the center and safe. Art is not about sensitivity. Art is not about making sure that every group, minority or majority, is happy. Academic teaching is not supposed to be about that either. The teaching of Black history is not there to make white people like me happy. It is to try to get at the truth of our actual history. When that is lost, we are no longer living in a culture that treasures not just freedom of expression and liberty. We are being governed by a new kind of Orwellian thought police, whose moral stand is not about clarity and truth in art, but about parsing sensitivity issues, whether right or left, and art and literature will die. Publishers and editors should be ashamed of themselves if they're sending manuscripts out to sensitivity readers to keep them up to date on what the language police from the right or the left think is appropriate. They should be ashamed. They are betraying the history of literature. Literature has never been about making people feel safe, comfortable. The idea of looking for triggers in what I write is abominable to me. My writing is about my writing. It is about my point of view. If I write a woman's piece of dialogue in a novel like mine, Portofino, which, by the way, I've heard from thousands of women over the last 30 years that it's been published, thanking me for writing in the voice of a young girl who is falling in love with my character, Calvin Becker, and vice versa, and capturing what they think is an authentic voice. In this case, worse than just writing woman's dialogue, I'm writing for a child, and I'm writing for a British child. What do I know about that? Well, I did go to boarding school in the UK for 5.5 years before I ran away from school, and so forth and so on. But that said, I had the freedom to write what I wanted. It was not submitted to a sensitivity reader to find out if I had referred correctly on all pronouns or whatever it might be. And I can only imagine what it's like to be a teacher in Florida today, being censored by your state government, by your Governor DeSantis, and being told that you have to ignore whether it's just don't say gay or just don't say black or whatever it may be, huge chunks of human experience. So I have this message to writers, let's push back. I have this message to actors, let's push back. I have messages for producers and directors, let's push back. If you care about art and you care about expression and you care about freedom, do you want to be part of what is the equivalent today of what Victorian Roman Catholic bishops and 18th century bishops started doing to Roman and Greek statuary, as well as Renaissance statuary, insisting on literally nailing on or plastering on or gluing on fig leaves over genitalia to make them appropriate so that Roman Catholic conservative, misogynist popes, bishops, priests, and others would not be disturbed and or triggered. Yes, that is exactly what the word is appropriate to be used in that context, by seeing a male penis, God forbid, or a vagina, God forbid. And then later, in the late 19th century through to the 20th century, more enlightened people began to pry those stupid fig leaves off and reveal what, God forbid, the artist actually intended. If we're going to be a risk-free, averse to all triggering elements, if everything is dedicated to not upsetting minority views or even majority views, that's not what art is about. Forgive me, that's my point of view. And I would call on other artists to goddamn well speak up now before it's too late. Push back against the oversensitive left. Push back against the tyrannical Christian fascist right, who are making demands on us, whether it's the teaching of Black history or making sure that all the pronouns in a new novel are correct unless we upset somebody. Tell publishers that are submitting manuscripts to sensitivity readers to make them correct for that moment that they're idiots. They won't be correct 10 years from now. Then they'll come up with new stuff. And as for the idea of rewriting literature to make it acceptable to today's ever-fluctuating, ever-changing mores, bullshit. That's the way to wipe out all human history, all knowledge, all experimental thinking. It's also, by the way, the way to destroy science, because science too now comes under the politically correct microscope of the right or left. If you don't believe in climate change, you have to find people who will help you deny that science. If you're into the whole gender pronoun thing and something in science about genetics and gender looks as if it challenges your point of view, oh, then science suddenly is fascist. Well, guess what? Reality is not going to change because of the words we use about it, but art will, and art is going to die. My name is Frank Schaefer.